What's up guys, and welcome to this guide on how to find yourself a shiny raid in Pokémon Sword and Pokémon Shield, as well as, just rather than just how to find it, how to come across any problems you find along the way, just to sort of go through the whole process. So in terms of doing this, we are going to be using a seed checking method, because of course if you just want to find a shiny raid without any sort of interference, you could just run around the wild area and do raids to your heart's content for days, for weeks, but you may not find one. Similarly, you could also use the 3-day reset method, or even just the single-day reset method if you really want to find yourself a shiny. However, this can be tedious because you have no idea whether the shiny is going to ever show up or whether it's going to be in 10 resets time. Whereas if you get the seed of your raid, you can find out exactly when it's going to be shiny, and also then you can look for other factors like whether it's got the right ability and whether it's a star or a square shiny, and so on and so forth. So obviously if you're not a fan of seed checking and so on and so forth, I said that twice, of course don't watch this video. But if you do just want to get a shiny raid to host with some friends, to host online for other people, or just to catch the shiny yourself, this would be the way to go, because at least as long as you do the method correctly, you can get the shiny raid at the end of it. So it breaks down into sort of a few different steps. Step 1 is finding your beam. Now obviously if it's a common den you're going for, this is going to be very easy. You just throw a wishing piece in the den. However, if it's a rare den like a Gigantamax or an Evolution den or something similar to that, you are going to need to get a purple beam or a rare beam, which can take a bit longer, but is a fairly simple process. Step 2, once you've found your beam, is to then find the seed of that beam. There are a few ways to do this. Number 1 is to use some custom firmware, basically to be able to read the save file, look at what's in there currently and say, okay, I see that beam there, this is the seed. However, of course, not many people have custom firmware, and it's less common. But there are other ways. One other way is there is actually a way to dump your save file from the game without using custom firmware, which is another option. However, I believe that requires an old version of the Switch, and there are a few limits to it, so again, it's not going to apply to everyone. However, the most popular way, I suppose, to do so is to use Doodoo, who is a guy, I suppose, who has made a bot that runs continuously on Pokémon Sword and Shield, continuously looking in for trades on a certain trade code, and the way you do it is you catch a Pokémon from your raid. You then offer that up in a trade. This bot, which is obviously running on some form of custom firmware, reads the Pokemon, looks at its information, and then determines the seed of the raid from that. So that's the main way to do it, and that's what we'll be using in this video, because I don't have a custom firmware Switch. I'm sure many of you don't, so that would be the way to go. Step 3, once we've found your seed, is to then look for the shiny frame. So the way frames are sort of built is every day is a frame per se. So when you throw the wishing piece in, you're on frame 1. If you leave that den there chilling, and the day rolls over on your Switch from the first to the second, it will advance 1 frame. This is obviously done in a way so that it allows the dens to reset every day, something similar to that. However, we can use it for this sort of purpose. So we can use a piece of software called Raid Finder, which you can input your seed into, and it can show you all the frames, so you can see in 10 days, this is the raid you're going to have. In 20 days, this is what you're going to have. And obviously then you can use some filtering to say, when is this raid going to happen? Looking for either a shiny or a specific hidden ability, for example. Once we've found that, as long as it's a suitable number, we can then move on to getting to that day. So we can use some exploits in the game rather than having to wait so many days, years even, for this shiny day to pop up. We can use some exploits in the game to be able to manually roll the day forward over and over and over until eventually we reach that glorious shiny day. There are problems people come across with this. Even in this example I'm going through in the video, I end up not quite matching what I was expecting, but that's fine because there are ways to recover in many instances, or at least double check where you are in case you lose track or you slip up somewhere, as I'll be covering later on. Of course, once you've then found that shiny day, the way ideally you want to do it, rather than just saving on the shiny, is you save 3 days before. So say your shiny is on the 4th day of a month, you would want to save the game on the 1st day of the month. The reason for that being is that the way RNG works for raids is sort of split into 2. We have these frames which determines the Pokemon's stats, shininess, ability, nature, etc. However, then there's a separate set of RNG which is based on the Pokemon's species. So you can have the same frame, but you can get different Pokemon on it over and over again. However, the way the species RNG works is that the first 3 Pokemon after you save are always going to be the same. So if you save and the Pokemon in your den is a Morgrem, it's always going to be a Morgrem when you open up the save file on that day. Say the day, if you roll one day forward and it changes to a Grimmsnarl, it's always going to be a Grimmsnarl after one reset. If you reset once more and it changes into a Togekiss, it's always going to be a Togekiss. However, on the 3rd reset going to the 4th day, that is the first time the Pokemon can be random. Thus, we save 3 days before the shiny day, so you can continuously open the den up, roll 3 days forward, get a different Pokemon which is shiny, host that for your friends or whoever else. They can get this shiny, so shiny Togekiss maybe it is. Then you reset the game, go back to the first, roll 3 more days forward again. This time it's a shiny Grimmsnarl, they can get a shiny Grimmsnarl. So you can make your den a lot more valuable, a lot more useful, get the most use out of it as possible, since it is a bit of work to get a den by saving 3 days before, and of course we'll cover this when we get to it in the video. So those are your 4 steps. Get the beam, get the seed, get the frame, arrive at the frame, and I guess step 5 would be, yes, save at the right points, and then you're good to go basically. So we're going to step through one stage at a time, and hopefully this will answer any questions. As I said, I'm also going to be covering how to recover basically if you mess up your resets, which I seem to do here somehow, but we'll get to that in the video. So of course the first step is to get yourself a beam. The way you get your beam, of course, as I said, if it's a red common beam, you just throw a wishing piece in and you're done. However, if you're looking for a rare beam, there are a few ways to keep on getting this, I suppose. The first being the old slow save method, where you turn your text speed to slow, you throw the wishing piece in the den, you can see what colour it is a split second before the save finishes, so you can then close the game, reopen up, throw the wishing piece in again, and keep on doing it until you get a purple. I don't use this method, I've never used this method. It does have a chance of messing your save file up if you are a bit too slow, it would seem, so I wouldn't recommend it. Instead, what I do here is I'm just running back and forth between 2 dens, throwing wishing pieces back and forth in between them, because you can only have one wishing piece den at a time. So I'm looking at this den here, which is actually the Gigantamax or Beetle den, so I do need a purple beam for that, and I'm trying to get purple beam there, so I'm throwing wishing pieces in. It's a red beam, so I'm going to cycle over to another one, throw another one in there, and keep on going back and forth doing this until finally we get that purple beam, as you can see here. Once this happens, the game automatically saves, of course, so what we're going to do is we're going to hop into the den and we are going to catch the Pokemon inside. To speed this step up, or not the next step really, with trading and getting your seed from the bots, what you can also do here, instead of just joining it yourself, is you can invite some friends to join with you. They can also catch the Pokemon, and they can also then attempt to trade with the Doodoo bot, which of course means, more hands make light work. So if you have the option and your friends are willing, you can of course do that. I'm just catching it myself here, and I'm going to chuck a Master Ball because I'm about to reload the save anyway. So once you've caught this Pokemon, do not save the game. If you save the game here, your beam is gone, thus the seed is gone, thus even if you can trade with the bot, it's useless to you because you've already lost it. So no more saving after this point. What you then do is you hop online and you use the trade code given on the Doodoo bot's website, which of course I'll link down below. Now this code is currently 9162. In the past it has been required to be figured out through riddles, so through some maths problems or other similar stuff like that. However, there are currently 2 bots running, so it seems that maybe it's not needed as much anymore and they haven't got too much load. It can take a bit of a while to trade with the bot, hence why I suggest if you have friends willing to help, you get friends who are willing to help. However, you can also match it yourself. It's about timing to some extent. You can watch the progress bars on the website increase and decrease as you go along, and try and time it correctly, but eventually you will jump into a trade with Doodoo, as you can see from the name. Hopefully it's the actual Doodoo bot and not someone impersonating it, which could happen in the future. But once you do, you definitely don't want to leave the trade, as I always try to. You want to go to the Pokemon you caught from the den, thus it's probably easier to have it in your party, or at least in the first slot of the box. Go to the Pokemon den, we're going to then offer the Pokemon up to, yes, it was in a cell, I remember now. We're going to offer the Pokemon up to the bot. and the bot is going to read it, and the bot is then going to cancel the trade. Now this is important because of course if we actually completed the trade, the game would be saved and the den would be lost, which is useless. The bot is going to read it, and then it's going to print this out on the website, as you can see here. So we then have our seed, which we can plug into the piece of software known as the Raid Finder. So now that you've got your seed from the bot, we can have a look at the new software, or not new software, but the software we call Raid Finder. So this is what it looks like initially when you open it up. It can be a bit daunting at first because you don't know what all the different moving parts are doing and so on, but settings wise it's nothing really important. Tools, we do have an IV calculator and a den map here. Den map obviously is a den map, that's fairly explanatory, so it can help you find your den, and also IV calculator we may make some use of later on to find out Pokemon's IVs. Of course you could use anything else, Cerebee's IV calculator, Psypokes, etc. There are plenty of others online you could use, but this one's in the app, so you can just use it straight there. So what have we got here? Well, we have profiles first, and this isn't really important, but you can have as many profiles as you want, and you can set up the trainer ID and the secret ID. Of course I don't have my secret ID, so I haven't set it up, but I really just have one for Shield, one for Sword, because of course if you're looking at a exclusive Pokemon or exclusive den, then you will need to have the right version selected. Of course I'm on Shield, so I'm going to be using my Shield version, so we'll leave that locked in there. Then we come up and we have to set up this side first, which gives us obviously the den we're looking at, the seed we just received from the bots, and then obviously we have a few options here. So to find our den, these numbers aren't the same as are on Cerebee, which is where most people use. Of course you can see they're just listed in order by area. So what you can do is obviously go to the den map we just saw and have a look and see my den is in the bridge field, so we'll go to bridge field. It's not there because I'm right next to the daycare basically, so 50, a bit closer, 51, a bit closer again, 52, too far south, 53, and then 54. Maybe it's what I need. The other way to do it, of course, is to go to the selecting that list here, and if we go to 54, you can see we have on the side here we have settings, and you can select the rarity, whether it's a normal, so a red beam, or a rare, a purple beam. And of course this will change which species are in the list here. So if we change to rare, because that's what we have, you see it changes to Wimpod, and we have Orbeetle at the bottom. If I select that, you can see it changes to Gigantamax Yes. So that's one way to find the den you want here, is to find the right area and then look for each one individually until you find basically the right list you need. And because this is a Gigantamax Yes, it's obviously the Orbeetle den we do need. So what this settings panel here really does is allows you to select which Pokemon you will see the stats for in the frame list. So if we plug my seed in, now we have the right den, and we generate some frames, you can see everything's all come up there, and you can see if we go for Wimpod and generate the list here, he's only going to have one perfect IV, whereas if we go for the Orbeetle and generate the list, he's going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 for example. So what I also did before I quit out the game there was I made a quick note of the stats of that Selgor we caught. So if we select the Selgor from the list here and then generate the frame, you can see it's basically the same as the Orbeetle one. So the Selgor we had perfect health points, perfect defense, perfect special attack, actually had a no good special defense as in 0, and then it also had perfect speed. It was a female, had a hardy nature, and also had hydration, which is in ability slot 1 for a Selgor. So you can see here that the first frame is the Pokemon we caught. It's probably a good idea to always make a note of the stats of the Pokemon you caught so you can check it against the first frame. When I was initially recording this video, I had a very rare occurrence where I got the seed from the bots, plugged it in, got a fairly low frame, rolled up to the frame, got nothing, checked as we'll look at with methods in a minute, and nothing basically was lining up at all. Like, I had a seed, but nothing I was getting from the den was actually matching to the seed. If I had checked the stats to this first frame, I might have found that they were different, and maybe this is just an issue with the bot that can happen every now and again, but you can see in this case we have a matching frame. It matches the Pokemon we caught, so we are indeed on frame 1 because that's where you would start. So we generated 100 results here. You can change the initial frame and it basically adjusts slightly, but I wouldn't mess with that. As long as you're using a fresh beam, you shouldn't have to mess with the initial frame at all. You should be fine. So you can then select the Pokemon you want to find the stats for and see. So we have loads of stats here. We have nothing shiny, of course, because why would it be? Which brings us to the filters section. So the filters section here allows you to filter these frames by something you're looking for. So say you're looking for perfect 5 IV or Beetle. So we don't want everything but attack. So if we just have a quick look, generate, you can see nothing in the first 100 frames gives us what we want. If we jump up to 1000, we can go to frame 106 to give us almost the 6 IV actually. It's only 30 in attack, that's pretty good. So you can basically mess around with the filters as much as you want. You could look for 6 IV if you wanted. Obviously, okay, we've got 6 IV, 256, too bad actually. It's a very low 6 IV, hidden ability as well. You could even filter it by nature, so you want maybe a timid, if I can find timid on the list. There he is, timid. Obviously there's nothing there. We can bump it up even more, bump up even more. You have to go 67,000 frames to get a 6 IV timid Pokemon, and yeah, there's the sort of things you wouldn't really look for too often. So if we bump it back to standard, let everything through, and of course the only thing we're going to filter by is shiny, because that's what we're looking for. So you can see in this list here, you can select by star, square, or just both. We're going to do both because obviously a shiny is a shiny, and we can easily filter the list if we need to. There's nothing in the first 100 frames because that would be very lucky of us, but if we bump to 1000, you can see we have one here at 906. So it's 4 IV, 8 attack, 20 speed. It's a star shiny, gentle nature, and it's got so on and so on. If we were to bump even higher again, you can see we have another one further up, 8,900 frames. In terms of the frame count you're looking for, anything below 2000 is ideal. That's doable in a fairly short amount of time. Anything below 4000 is again doable, just with a bit more work. Anything above 4000, you may be better off just getting a new beam, so that'd be going back to the start, repiecing somewhere else, or clearing the den to begin with, getting another purple beam, catching the Pokemon, trading with the bot again, and coming right back here to see what your count is this time. Of course, if you're going for something very specific, so say you're looking for a hidden ability shiny, then of course you may have to go for higher frames, but even then anything over 10,000 you may be better off just re-rolling for another den, simply because 10,000 frames is 30 years, and that's a long time. So we got a frame here. If we filter back up to 1000 at 906, so we are 905 frames away from that shiny. So what we're going to do now is go back in game, and we're going to have to reset the den 905 times. So that seems like a lot, and it is a lot, but there are methods we can use to speed it up and make it fairly quick. So let's jump back in game and we'll see what we can do from here. So now that we have our seed, we jump back into the game, and we need to use one of these exploits I mentioned to allow us to roll the date forward manually over and over and over. The way, and the most popular one for this I suppose, is the ranked battle trick. Now this involves going into the X menu, going to versus, going to battle stadium and then ranked battle, and doing a ranked battle. After this point you can freely change the date forwards, and it will cause daily events to refresh, like berry trees, the lotto, of course dens here. This is only useful for dens because we know exactly how far we need to go. If we didn't know exactly how far we needed to go, we would need to check the den every time and check the raid every time, and that would be a lot slower. We may as well use the standard invite others method. If you are going to use the ranked battle method, please play the battle out. There have been reports of some people maybe being banned from future ranked competitions if you do keep on forfeiting, so just play the battle out. It's not a huge amount of time, 5-10 minutes at most. I managed to win all my battles here, so it's a bit of a flex, but so play the battle out, and once you're out, what you can then do is hop into the settings menu, go to the date time, change the date time at 1 forward, and then you can see, if you go back to the game, that your watts on the den have reset, which means that it has indeed rolled the game properly. So now we need to find exactly where we need to go. So there's a date calculator online, which again I'll link in the description, where you can put in your current date on your Switch, which for me was the 12th of January 2020, put in how many frames you need to go forward, so I put in 905 because we're going to 906, so that's from 1 to 906 is 905 changes, and then of course we can then plug that in and it tells us exactly when in the future we need to go to, which happens to be Tuesday the 5th of July 2022. So of course we know exactly where we need to go, so we can carry on rolling forward the date. However, we are going to leave the wild area. There is an issue if you keep on rolling the date forward while you're in the wild area, that the game can crash. This is due to the weather changing a lot, because every time you change the date, the weather needs to change. And of course, I think if these updates keep on stacking while you're not in the game, it can cause a crash. So leave the wild area, but do not fly out of the wild area, because this can break the ranked battle exploit, and you'll just have to do it again. So cycle your way out to a Pokemon Center is probably the best place to do it, and settle up in there, and you can start rolling. Now the way to do this is you just go to date time, you just go to date, you roll the date up 1, you click OK, and you can do it again. You don't need to go back to the game. So that's the very nice thing about the ranked battle trick. So just keep on doing it, you know. Up one day, okay, up one day, okay, up, and over and over and over. Of course, the places to watch are the ends of the month, that you don't go from the 31st of January to the 31st of February, or the 31st of January to the 1st of January, which doesn't make any sense. So just be careful when you get to the end. Of course, I'm having to record this with my Switch in the dock. However, it's much easier to do with handheld and using, your fingers. So I'll show you a quick clip here of how I tend to do it quickly with just 2 fingers here, using one finger to increase the date, while the other one switches back and forth between OK and selecting the date and time to change it again. That's the way I tend to do it. Of course, people may have other methods, but that seems to work fairly easily. So we're going 900 days, which is just over 2 years, 2.5 years almost. So it's a bit of time, but eventually we will get there. Make sure to save every 6 months or so would be my advice. This allows you to, in case there is a crash for some reason, you can actually recover some of your research, rather than going trying to do the whole thing in one block and then having to do 2 years again. You can do it every 6 months. So if the game does crash or you have to leave for some reason, you just have to do another 6 months. It's really not a huge issue. This is less pertinent since we're not in the wild area and the chance of crashing isn't as high. However, it's just good practice to do anyway. So we're going to keep rolling forward, and I'm going to go to the 1st of June 2022. This is just over a month before our expected day, and the reason for this is because I want to double check when we get there. As part of this process, I did skip a few months by accident, so I went from end of February to the start of February, and then had to go to the start of March. I also think I double moved at one point, so I skipped a day forward by accident, or 2 days at a time rather, which means the date's not accurate anymore. So I'm going to leave myself plenty of space, over a month, to just double check basically. And what you can do here, when I save at the 1st of June, is I can then go into the battle, catch the Pokemon that's in the den, it's not shiny of course, and then I can use the stats, the nature, the gender, etc. on that Pokemon to then find out exactly where I am in the frames. So we're going to jump into Raid Finder now with the stats from this Pokemon, and we'll figure out exactly where we are. Okay, so now that we've caught that Doppler, what I've done is I've noted down the stats for it, i.e. the IVs, as well as using the IV calculator here. I've selected a Doppler, it has a lonely nature, and I've put in all the stats here, which gives me a nice defined range. So you can see 29 to 31, we know the health points, and the special attack and the speed are perfect, so we can use just 31 for those, whereas the others we can enter a range. So you can see here in the filter section I've put 31 to 31, 17 to 18, 25 to 26, 31 to 31, 7 to 8, 31 to 31. I've also filled in the nature. It has Swarm as an ability, which is in slot number 1, and it is a female Doppler. Obviously we're not looking at shiny because it's not shiny. What you can then do is select Doppler in here and then click generate again. You can see here it's given me a frame on which we would get that exact Doppler, and you can see that frame is 871, whereas our shiny frame is 906, meaning we would be, some quick maths here, 29, 35 resets off of the shiny. Now I don't exactly know how skipping the month and so on affects the frame count, whether it reverts the month. I think I did it maybe 3 or 4 times, so I feel like it's iffy basically. But I did, if we think about it, as I said, it was 35 days off. That's maybe exactly what we need actually, because I saved on June 1st, 30 days goes to July, and then 5 is July 5th, which I think was our initial date, or maybe it was July 4th. So maybe I put an extra reset in somewhere as well. But that's why I like to stop a bit earlier than we need to actually double check where we're going basically, as opposed to roll all the way to July, the initial date we wanted, which was going to be July 4th, find out that it's not shiny, and I've no idea where to go now, so I find it nice to stop early, catch the Pokemon and figure out where we are. So 871, we're going to have to do a total of, to get to 906, Obviously you need to add on 29 to get to 900 and then 6 more to get to 906, so that would be 35 more resets. And so we can go back to the date calculator and we can plug in the 1st of June 2022, 35 days, and it'll give us where we need to go next. So this is really useful for that sort of thing. Some people do catch the Pokemon as I just did and then try and trade with the bot again, which works because the bot will then say 35 resets. However, it's no point, you don't need to. You can search, reverse look up basically your Pokemon that you've caught in here and it gives you the right thing. This is where I came into issues with my previous attempt at doing this video in this example, where the Pokemon I caught was not appearing on any frames at all, which was crazily impossible. So something was obviously wrong with that seed. Anyway, we have our new frame count and we can then go ahead and do 35 more resets and hopefully get to our shiny. So we're going to go back in game. Now in this case I am going to do the rank battle again. You don't need to at this point, but because it's 35 resets, there's still quite a few. So I'm going to roll up closer to the date. I'm going to go to July 1st, or maybe not July 1st, 30th of June, let's say. That's my birthday, why not? Nice round number. And then we'll save then, and then we'll roll a bit more further forward, and then we can check the den on the 5th of July, I think, which would be the reset count, and hopefully find a shiny. So now that we know we're so far off, and the date is apparently June or July 5th, which is what we expect anyway, I'm going to do another rank battle. You could just use invite others for this, but it is 30 days, which could take a while. So I'll do another rank battle here. Get the exploit running again. I'm not going to leave the wild area this time because it is only a month, but of course if you want to be extra safe you can. And we're going to roll 1 month forward to July 30th, and that's where I'm going to save, which is a few days before, about a week before the expected date, just to give us a bit of breathing room. So I'm going to save here, so in case this doesn't work, I don't have to go all the way back to June 1st again. I'm going to roll forward to June 5th, which is July 5th rather, which is what we expect, and we're going to open the den up, and it's not a shiny for some reason. Now I still don't know why this happened, but that's fine, it can be recovered again. What we're going to do is catch the Orbeetle here, and we're going to figure out what its stats are and where we are in the chain basically. So again, I've jumped back into Raid Finder. I've taken Orbeetle's stats from the game here, 38 etc, quiet etc, and I've then plugged them into the filter, changed it down to quiet nature, it's ability 2 because it's frisk, it's a female, and we then generated the stats here, and you can see we have a frame at 904, which gives us the exact Orbeetle we've got, because I've also selected Orbeetle in the list. Make sure to do that. If you have something selected like Dottler, you might not find anything and that might just confuse you. So Orbeetle is here, 904. Remember our shiny frame was 906, so if we just remove the filter very quickly and just pop it back onto shinies only and take them all away, we can see at 906 we have the frame, so we are 2 off. So we went to the 5th of July and it was not shiny, so that's 904. So if we go to the 6th, it should be 905, and then the 7th should be 906, which is our shiny frame. So I'll boot the game up again. I'm going to set my date back to when I saved, which was the 30th of June, just so we don't get mixed up with dates basically, and then I'm going to roll forward to the 7th of July and we'll find out then whether it's shiny or not. Hopefully it will be, we'll see. So now we know that we're basically 2 days off of our shiny day. We can go back to June 30th, make sure to set the day back just so you don't end up, forgetting where you are. And we're going to roll forward to July 7th, which is when we're supposed to be. And I'm just going to use the invite others method for this because it is only 7 days or so, which is obviously a lot less than 30. And it saves going through another ranked battle, and it's probably would take longer. So we can jump forward to July 7th, open up the den, and as you can see, the den is shiny. So July 7th is our shiny day. As I mentioned earlier, to allow rotating the den for different Pokemon, we want to save 3 days before the shiny day. So if the 7th is our shiny day, we're going to go back 3 days. So 6, 5, 4. So we're going to save on July 4th to lock in the den basically, to allow us, well, not lock in the den, but lock in the rotation to allow us to then, host the den for however long we want with lots of different Pokemon. So we save on July 4th, we then reload the game on June 30th rather, we roll forward to July 4th, we save, and then we continue rolling on to July 7th to double check it's a shiny, which it is. We can then close the game, set the date back to July 4th again, open the game up again, roll forward to July 7th again, Again, it's going to be a shiny, so that's all good there. So that is locked in exactly. As you might have been able to notice, my first 3 days are Dwebble, Dwebble, Dwebble. Those will always be Dwebble, 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 and then I'll have a random on the 4th. Don't ask me how I managed to get 3 Dwebbles in a row, must be bingo or something. So that will always be the case. So you can now start hosting, and you can just rotate the den. There is a way to hold your current Pokemon. So say I find Gigantamax or Beetle, as I would quite like to, but actually I'm not done farming for the other types of shinies yet. What I can do is I can use airplane mode to hold it for a while and to host a few lobbies of Gigantamax or Beetle, and then I can go back to rotations afterwards. So this isn't, rather than just hosting the one lobby and people not catching it and so on. So what you can do is you can use handheld for this, so I can't actually show you because I can't record handheld, apart from with a really bad webcam. So what you do in handheld is, as you are starting the raid, you can hold down the home button, which opens up a side menu, and this side menu shows you stuff like sound and so on, but there's also flight mode. Flight mode is obviously a way you can use the switch on a plane, which stops it from looking for wireless devices, which is nice, including obviously the internet. So what you do is you hold that menu open, and then as the raid is starting during the opening cutscene, you can then tick flight mode on. You'll get a communication error pop up and it'll say, lost communication with consoles or something along those lines. If you just dismiss that, the raid will continue on until you get to the point where you send your Pokemon out. At that point you'll be kicked out, boom, gone, and you'll be stood outside the den again with the raid still there, still being Gigantamax or Beetle or whatever Pokemon it was before. At this point you can turn flight mode off, reconnect to the internet, and then go host another lobby. And you can keep on doing this over and over and over as long as you want until you're done with the Gmax, and then you can just close the game, go back to rotating. Obviously, while you're in this state you can't trade. Trading would save the game and lock you in. You ideally can't do any other raids either, because of course you won't be able to save the game, so if you did join a raid, you can't get the Pokemon, so there's no good. So there are some downsides to it, but it can be used quite well. Of course, there are rules in terms of having a den as well, so you don't lose it. Rule number 1 is the date must always be the same when you load the game. So for example, the 4th of July was our date here, so I should always open the game on July 4th. There is a way you can get a nicer date, which I do show here, because I prefer to have my caught Pokemon with the right dates. So what you can do is you can set the date back as far as you want. No problem there. So I went all the way back from July 4th, 2022 to the 12th of January 2020, because backward changes do not have any effect on the rolls of the den at all. There's no change at all. So I can go back to the 12th, which makes the 12th my base date, which means 3 rolls, 13, 14, 15. 15 is my shiny day. So that's how that works there. You can change it back. I believe you can also change it forward even, by just doing it in the game. So for example, you can do this as well for making your dates nice. Let's say I'm playing, it's saved on the 12th of January at the moment, but tomorrow it's going to be the 13th of January. If I'm joining a raid then, ideally I want my date caught to be the right day, just to have things nice. That's the way I am. What I can do is while I'm in the game, without using the invite others trick or the ranked battle trick, I can just change the date forward to the 13th. It won't cause a roll on the den at all, because it's not part of the exploit in the game. Yeah, if it did, we wouldn't even have to use the exploit, we would just be able to change the dates. So we can change it to the 13th, I can catch a Pokemon from the raid, it's going to show up as caught on the 13th, but what I must do before I save the game is change the date back to the 12th. Always change the date back to your base date if you're going to save the game. That's the way to do it there. Which links into the idea behind, okay, you should always open it on the same day. So for example, now that I've changed the date, I should always open it on January 12th, 2020. So that's rule 1. Rule 2 is once you've started rolling forwards, so if you do one day from 12 to 13 or, whatever your date might be, you can't do anything here. Don't save because you're locking a certain Pokemon. Don't do a raid because you'll lose the Pokemon you catch. Don't do a trade, nothing like that. If you do one roll, do all 3 and host the den. Never sort of stop in the middle or between. Which also links into the last point, which is similarly, if you're going to play the game normally, make sure your date does not roll over while you're playing the game. Which is a fair point, it's similar to the first point, as in only open it on the same day. Good way to achieve this is whenever you open the game up, or whenever you really start a play session, set the time back to 1 AM as well, which means that unless you're playing for 3 hours straight, the date is not going to tick over while you're playing. Of course, you would be able to recover this if you were, rolled over and you realised. You could say, oh shit. All you have to do is just close it down and reopen the game up on the right day, and of course nothing would have changed. The threat is you're hatching eggs, you don't notice the day tick over, you save because you hatched a shiny, and of course then the den is gone. Or not gone, but locked into a certain Pokemon. So it's not the end of the world, but it can be bad. So those are a few tips in terms of how to make sure you don't lose the raid, which is not ideal. However, nowadays it's not the worst to get dens, as you see, so hopefully you guys have some luck. Let me know down below in the comment section whether you managed to get a den successfully, or whether you had one before or in the past, or whether you want to get one. Of course, let me know down below about that, and I hope you enjoy your shiny raids, guys. Anyway, that's going to be it for me for today, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope it helps you out, so I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.